Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be the fun part in this section in which we are going to go through a live demonstration on implementing a live ExpressRoute circuit. Let's go ahead and cover what we are going to be doing. For this demonstration, we are going to use our standalone Azure tenant. In other words, we will not be able to follow along in the playgrounds because we will need access to the full tenant, and we are also going to be working with a live ExpressRoute circuit, which requires coordination with a service provider. In this demonstration, we are going to start with a single virtual network set up in advance. From there, we will go through our steps in which we will start by first creating an ExpressRoute network gateway inside of our virtual network. And then as our network gateway is taking its 20 to 30 minutes to complete, we will then move on to creating our ExpressRoute circuit. As mentioned in our implementation lesson, this is essentially a two-step process in which we are going to start by provisioning within the Azure interface. After our circuit is then provisioned in Azure, we will then go to our service provider and provide the service key that we are provided and use that service key to create the pairing on the service provider side to create the circuit on their end as well. For this particular demonstration, we are partnering with Megaport, who is an ExpressRoute Global Network as a Service partner, to set up this live circuit. Megaport was kind enough to provide us a circuit to make this demonstration possible, so thank you very much to Megaport. After our live circuit is up and running, we'll then go on to our next implementation step, which is to create the private peering connection, from which we will enter BGP peering info for an on-premises network. For this demonstration, we don't actually have an on-premises network that we are peering with, so we will go ahead and make up some BGP peer values just so we can go ahead and move on to the next step. It will not ultimately affect our circuit demonstration. And then once we have our circuit and our private peering configuration set up, we will then finish up the process by connecting our provisioned ExpressRoute circuit with our ExpressRoute network gateway, which will complete the process of connecting our ExpressRoute circuit to our virtual network. Quite a bit of fun ground to cover. Let's go ahead and jump into our portal and get the process started. Okay, back in our Azure portal, let's go ahead and start the process of setting up an ExpressRoute circuit. To go ahead and give a quick layout of what we have set up, we have a virtual network already created called Hub VNet. This is the virtual network that we are going to create our ExpressRoute network gateway in. We also have a couple other tabs open. I just have another blank portal tab, which I'm going to use for our ExpressRoute circuit configuration. And we also have a tab for our account with our Megaport service provider that we are going to use to create the service provider side of the ExpressRoute circuit. We'll get to these two tabs here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and start with step one of the process, which is to create an ExpressRoute network gateway in our virtual network. Let's do that now. To do so, we will get into our network gateways menu. If I click on our search bar up top, I already got into network gateways recently. I'll just click on virtual network gateways right here. Go ahead and create a new virtual network gateway. And we will go through a similar process to our VPN gateway setup, except we are using ExpressRoute instead. Let's go ahead and give our gateway a name of ER-gateway. We need to set our region to Central US because that is where our virtual network is at. Our gateway type is going to be ExpressRoute. Next, we need to set our ExpressRoute SKU. Notice we have our standard, high performance, and ultra performance SKUs in the availability zone redundant versions as well. For this demonstration, we will stick with standard. And we need to choose a virtual network to attach it to, which will be our Hub VNet virtual network right here. As usual, we need to create a dedicated gateway subnet, which is already provided an address space here. I'll go ahead and switch our CIDR range to 27. Create a new public IP address. We'll just call it ER-IP and give it a standard SKU. Everything else is good. Let's go ahead and click on Review and Create. And then once we get validation, we'll go ahead and click on Create from there. Now, like our VPN gateway setup, this will take about 20 to 30 minutes to complete. In the meantime, let's go ahead and create our ExpressRoute circuit starting on the Azure side and then moving onto our service provider side to complete the process. To do so, for demonstration's sake, I will go to our second tab we already have open in the Azure portal and go ahead and either search for ExpressRoute circuits, or in my case, I can just click on it right here. From here, we are going to create the ExpressRoute circuit, which will then provide us a service key we take to our service provider. Let's go ahead and click on Create a new ExpressRoute circuit. Start by providing a resource group. In this case, I created a resource group named ExpressRoute Demo RG. We'll go with Central US again. And then give our circuit a name. We'll just call it ER Demo Circuit. Just give it a nice simple name. On our configuration screen, we next need to set our ExpressRoute circuit parameters. These are going to be very familiar if you went through our deployment models lesson. We'll go ahead and use a service provider as opposed to direct. We're going to go ahead and create a new circuit. Next, we need to choose our provider. In this case, since we are going to choose Megaport, I'll just type in MEGA, which comes up with Megaport. For this demonstration, we're going to use their Chicago location, so we can choose Chicago from this list here. And we need to choose the bandwidth of our ExpressRoute circuit. Notice we can choose between 50 megabits per second all the way up to 10 gigabits per second. If I choose 50 megabits per second, notice we can choose between the standard or the premium circuit SKU. Quick side note, different providers will have different SKUs available depending on other factors such as bandwidth. For example, if we change our circuit from 50 megabits over to a gigabit, the local SKU becomes available. And if you also notice, if we click on the local circuit SKU, the only billing model available is unlimited. However, if we go back to standard or premium, we can choose between either the metered or unlimited billing model. Again, we talked about this in our previous concepts lesson. For this specific demo, I'm going to change our bandwidth back down to 50 megabits per second. We will go with the standard SKU, use the metered billing model, and everything else is good as is, and then click on Review and Create. After validation, I'll go ahead and click on Create. And that will take just a moment to deploy. Okay, once our circuit is deployed, we'll click on Go to Resource. And at this moment, there's nothing else I can do on the Azure side. Now I need to take this information and go to our service provider, again, which is Megaport, and provision it on their side. Before I do so, the one very important piece of information on the right side is a service key, which I will need to provide to Megaport to go ahead and create a circuit and pair that with my Azure configuration here to go ahead and complete the process. I'll go ahead and copy my service key because we're going to come back to this in just a moment. Next, let's go to the service provider side in Megaport. Now, every service provider is different, so I'm not going to go through every single screen here for both demonstration and time's sake. However, there are a couple key pieces I want to focus on for this demonstration. Okay, skipping around to some of the relevant bits of this setup process, I'm going to go ahead and create our two connections from Megaport to our Microsoft Edge router. For this process, we'll choose a cloud provider, in this case, Microsoft Azure. And the one thing I wanted to point out is that notice we are being prompted for our service key. This is the service key in our circuit information that we are going to copy. And when we paste it in here, it's going to immediately go out to Azure to verify that service key to essentially pair up with where that circuit needs to go. And once that same service key is validated, we're going to choose to create a primary or a secondary connection. I'm going to go ahead and choose both. I will go ahead and skip ahead to portions of this setup to get straight to the point. Let's go ahead and initially set up my primary connection and click on Next. On our next screen, we need to set up our primary connection details. These are mostly relevant when pairing up with an on-premises network. Again, we do not have an on-prem network to set up with, so we're going to go ahead and make up some values just to go ahead and get the circuit created. Click on Next. Everything else is good. We'll go ahead and click on to add our initial cross-connect. And then I'll go ahead and create our second connection. This will be our secondary or backup one. I'll go ahead and choose Microsoft Azure again. Once again, paste in that same service key from our Azure side circuit setup process. And then once our service key validates, we'll go ahead and choose to create a secondary connection. Click on Next. We will once again go ahead and make up some VLAN and other relevant values. Click on Next. And then once we add our second cross connect, we now have a primary and a secondary connection. I will go ahead and order it. And then once our order validation is complete, click on Order Now, and this completes the process of creating our circuit on the service provider side. Now, in this case with Megaport, the entire process only takes about a minute or so to complete the connection. I'm going to go ahead and pause here for just a moment, go back to our Azure side ExpressRoute circuit, and finish setting up the process. Okay, we're back, and after about a minute or so of waiting, we can see that our circuit has been provisioned, which we can confirm on the right side underneath provider status of provisioned. And we also have our relevant circuit information, such as our provider and the peering location and the bandwidth of the Azure side ExpressRoute circuit as well. Moving on to our next step, which is to create the Azure private peering configuration to pair our non-existent, in this case, on-premises network over BGP to our ExpressRoute circuit, which would ultimately be used to communicate with our virtual network. To do so, underneath our peerings menu at the bottom here, we will click on Azure Private. And once again, we do not have an actual on-premises network, so for demonstration's sake, I'm going to go ahead and put in some made-up values just so we can go ahead and complete the circuit process. Okay, I put in some made-up values here. One thing I wanted to point out real quick is that these IP version 4 primary and secondary subnets would be subnets that you own in your on-premises network, which also have to use a /30 address range as well. Again, I made up some values just so we can go ahead and create our peering. Everything else is good, including our made up peer ASN. Let's go ahead and click on Save. Okay, at this point, we can see that our Azure private peering is complete, which we have confirmation right here, including our made up primary and secondary subnets. Final step of the process now that we have our network gateway created, or at least in the process of creating, our circuit created, our peering setup is to now connect our ExpressRoute circuit with our virtual network gateway. If we check in with our virtual network gateway we started off with, we can see it is still in the process of deploying, again, about 20-30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pause here and come back once our gateway is up and working and go ahead and finish this demonstration up. Okay, at this point, our network gateway is up and running. We'll go ahead and click on Go to Resource, and the last step is now to connect our network gateway with our ExpressRoute circuit. There's actually two different ways we can create this connection. The process we talked about in the implementation lesson is from the virtual network gateway is to click on the connections options underneath settings. Alternatively, we could go into our circuit interface, click on connections, and essentially create that same connection. Now, this is not the same as our VPN connections, in which we need to create two separate connections, one going each direction. In this case, we need to only create a single connection using either process, and that's all there is to it. For this demonstration, let's go ahead and use the gateway side setup, in which we're going to go into our network gateway menu, click on Connection, click on Add. This is going to be very familiar to our VPN gateway setup. Let's go ahead and give our connection a name. We'll just call it ER connection. The main difference from our previous lessons is we will change our connection type from VNet to VNet to ExpressRoute instead. From here, we have the network gateway we are going to use, ER gateway. We also need to choose our ExpressRoute circuit, from which we will select our ER demo circuit. And with that, that's really all there is to it. Again, if we were using the Network Gateway Premium SKU, we could choose to configure FastPath, which we are not going to do in this demo, and we'll go ahead and click on OK. This will once again take a few minutes to complete. I will pause and come back when it is done. Okay, and after a couple more minutes of waiting, we can see that our connection from our network gateway to our ExpressRoute circuit is complete. We see we have a status of succeeded right here. And if we click on it, we can get some additional details as well. We can also verify this from the ExpressRoute circuit interface. If we go back over to there and then click on Connections on the left side, we have the exact same connection here with the exact same succeeded status. Very good. At this point, we have completed our demonstration of creating an ExpressRoute circuit and linking it to a virtual network gateway by starting off by creating a virtual network gateway, creating an ExpressRoute circuit on both the Azure and the service provider side, creating an Azure private peering that uses a BGP peering to a made-up local on-premises network, and we completed the process by creating a connection from our ExpressRoute network gateway to our ExpressRoute circuit. With that, let's go ahead and quickly review our key takeaways in this lesson before we move on. In this hands-on demonstration, we demonstrated the process of creating an ExpressRoute connection to a virtual network, which included creating an ExpressRoute network gateway, provisioning our ExpressRoute circuit in Azure, in which we had to coordinate with a service provider, configured our made-up private peering settings, and then completing the process by connecting our completed circuit to an ExpressRoute network gateway. That's going to go ahead and wrap up this hands-on demonstration of how to set up an ExpressRoute circuit. Let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson.